This year, we saw a point guard win the league MVP for the first time since 2018 Russell Westbrook took home the award. That filled the 7-year gap of MVPs for arguably the most important position on the court. But it's still been over 14 years since we've seen a point guard out of the Eastern Conference hoist the MVP trophy. That was Derrick Rose, who rose the trophy in 2011, becoming the youngest MVP in the NBA's history. But over the years, we have seen some crazy talented point guards come out of the Eastern Conference that maybe didn't get the recognition of the best player in the entire NBA. But the East still had some of the most memorable point guards in the last decade of the league. We had guys like Chris Paul, who was a 4-time All-Star with the Hornets and finished second in MVP voting in his third NBA season. Two other guys with less recognition like Rajon Rondo, who transformed the passing game and was a constant defensive presence. And then come the more modern day players with flashy dribbling like Kyrie Irving, who is an 8-time All-Star out of the Eastern Conference. To some high-flying phenoms like John Wall, who was a pivotal piece in the upbringing of the athletic point guard position. But now we have a new wave of point guards that in my eyes are leading the Eastern Conference, with one player I could actually see making a case for the league MVP in the upcoming season. So based on what I believe to be a combination of talent, impact to the team when it comes to winning, and essentially the player I would want to lead my roster, here are my predictions for the 5 best point guards for the Eastern Conference ahead of the next NBA season. At number 1, there's only one correct answer for the best point guard in the East, and that's Cade Cunningham. So much so that I'm not even willing to say that this is a take, but honestly a fact. At just 23 years old, Cunningham put on a clinic last season for the Pistons, and he's actually a player that I could see making his MVP case after just one career All-Star appearance. Last year, Cunningham finished 7th in the voting overall and one of the 2 guards who received votes out of the East. However, to actually win the award is strictly based on how well the Pistons can do in the banged up Eastern Conference in this season. Either way, it doesn't take away from the fact that Cunningham could average a triple-double on top of over 27 points a game in just his 5th year in the league. Especially with Tyrese Halliburton out for the next year, in my eyes, there isn't a point guard that comes close to the value that Cunningham has scoring, creating, and finding his teammates on a game-by-game basis. In his best season yet, Cunningham just led the Pistons to their first playoff appearance since 2019. So with Tatum dealing with his injury and Giannis aging, we're soon about to experience the takeover from Cunningham in the Eastern Conference. To me, the second best guard in the East for 2026 is going to be Jalen Brunson, who averaged over 26 points a game himself last season. He's a second point guard from the East that had MVP voting points from last season along with Cunningham. However, while I do think Cade has more upside and is better in general, I do think that Brunson takes a small step back this season as Karl Towns continues to progress. Either way, I don't think it's enough to put any other guard other than Cunningham above him when it comes to any rankings in the East. Brunson has the ability to score at will, and his passing numbers are playing much better with the addition of Towns. And as a back-to-back 2-time All-Star, Brunson is one of the most developed guards in the conference who has experience over some of the other options at point guard. He led the Knicks in win shares in 2 of the last 3 seasons, and the combination of him and Towns could make for an even deeper run for the Knicks this upcoming year. And at number 3, I have to put Darius Garland, who might be the biggest surprise to see this high on the list. However, as the seasons go on, we find out just how polished his game actually is from top to bottom. He finds his spots on the court and shot over 47% from the field and just over 40% from behind the 3-point line last season. And that kind of efficiency is not something that's too common from a lead guard. Garland earned his second All-Star appearance a year ago and didn't even have his best season to date. Not to mention he was actually dealing with pop-up injuries a lot. This backcourt duo that I personally think is one of the best in the entire league is going to run the Eastern Conference once again. And to be honest, I think that if this team didn't have Mitchell, Garland would be perfectly fine taking up that role. He's now experienced with 6 years under his belt and is making nearly $40 million a season, and this could be the time he gets back-to-back All-Star appearances. And a big reason Garland grabs the 3rd spot on this list is because I truly think that he's one of the few players in this league that you could flawlessly place onto any roster at the point spot with almost no immediate hiccups to the offense, which I understand will probably be the biggest disagreement of any of the players on this list. But watching his game, you notice how skilled he is actually actually as a player that maybe those statistics don't immediately back up when you look. The number 4 point guard in the Eastern Conference is none other than Trae Young, who is consistently one of the most overlooked prospects in the entire NBA, and a large part of that is the lack of success that the Hawks have had with Young since he was drafted. However, it's still obvious that the franchise wouldn't function without their point guard and would easily be in a much worse position than they have been. He's led the league in assists for the first time last season and has averaged a double-double for now 3 consecutive years. The biggest concern with Trae Young is obviously the placement of his teams over the last 7 years. He's led the league in turnovers in 3 of the last 4 seasons, which is truthfully a liability for a point guard. And my second concern is his defensive production lacking to guard the better guards in this league, and his size makes it difficult for him to switch onto other bigger players. However, I think it just shows how much this offense relies on him to either create a shot for himself or for his teammates. But with his passing ability to less than ideal teammates and his scoring touch, there's no way you can consider any more than 5 guards better in the Eastern Conference on any given night. And the last point guard at the 5 spot has to be Tyrese Maxey, who hasn't had the chance to truly showcase his skills for a full season just yet. Last year, he played 52 games on the year and averaged 26 points a game on the worst shooting of his entire career, which has me thinking that he can easily get back to 47, 42, and 85% shooting that he was around for the first 3 years of his career. Maxey does a good job of self-creating his 2-pointers and getting to the basket while also taking a high percentage of his 3s on catch and shoot type situations. And if we have another season of Joel Embiid missing time, which is more than likely at this point, then we could see Maxey take the reins once again. And last time he did, he still led the 76ers to a playoff spot and led the franchise in win shares on that year. And to me, his scoring ability is always going to be there, and with other pieces around him, he'll slowly develop his passing skills as he progresses in the league. I also look at him as a player that is willing to do whatever it takes in order to win games, which is a reason why LaMelo Ball, who is one of the most unique players in the league, did not make this list, which I understand will also probably be the biggest question mark when it comes to the top 5 point guards in the East. But I've personally not been shy to the fact that I don't believe LaMelo does anything outside of what is good for his personal brand. And I think that's a big reason the Hornets have had no success under LaMelo Ball leadership since the day he was drafted. Now, he does do a good job of selling jerseys in the Charlotte brand alongside putting up numbers, but that's not enough to showcase him as one of the best guards in the East. And I think that any of these players have the ability to do what he does if they were, for a lack of better words, selfish. However, you guys tell me what you think was the craziest part of my list of the best point guards in the Eastern Conference for 2026. Either way, you guys comment below what your list is and let me know if you think my list is trash.
This ball.